Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unique Peace. I am Janice, the Quiet Healer, here on Long Island, New York. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher and self-care coach. Today, I am excited to bring on Dr. Trish Schneider. She is a holistic wellness nurse practitioner in the mental health field, and she has some fun stories to share with us on bringing peace into our world and that of our children. Good morning, Trish.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm excited to learn more about how you bring wellness to the neurodivergent population. So you are a mental health and wellness nurse practitioner. Just a mouthful. You are also the founder and CEO of Whole. I forgot the name of it.
Whole Health Alternatives.
Thank you. I wanted to say holistic. And I was like, I just looked at the company again this morning. Yes. So give us a little bit of background on how you entered into the mental health field and what that led to and how that led to the holistic side.
Yeah. So this is so funny because when I was in nursing school and I was in my psych mental health rotation, it was the rotation that I least liked. And I remember telling myself that I would never work in mental health because I didn't really understand, what it was like. And it wasn't until years later when I started working with children who had ADHD and they had autism, really a wide range of developmental disabilities. So I really found that I enjoyed working with these children and these teenagers who had these not only physical challenges, but also these, mental health challenges that were impacting their ability to perform, academically and sort of fit into a traditional classroom. And I really couldn't believe how much I enjoyed working with kids and working with, some of the challenges that families, were having. And so much so, I ended up getting a job at an inpatient psychiatric unit, both for children and adolescents. And then I found this, just this connection to working in this population. And I loved it so much. I went on to become a nurse practitioner. And I haven't looked back since. So, I sort of stumbled upon it. With the birth of my first child, I wasn't able to be on call and work, at the hospital as a nurse. I really wanted to find something that suited my schedule a little better. And nursing is so great that it does that. And it opens up all of these doors that you're not really looking for, but these opportunities just kind of fall on your lap. And it was like the best thing that ever happened because I found really what I was meant to do. I love this work and I love working with young people, and I also work with adults too, but I've done a lot in mental health. Yeah.
And how did you, what brought you, because sometimes there's always a story of, oh, I started this because it wasn't fulfilling that. So what brought you to start Whole Health Alternatives?
Yeah, it really was working with adults of all ages. And it was, they would come to me and they would have these symptoms, like everything checks out normal, but, I don't feel well. I don't feel fine. My mother, especially for years, she had these sort of vague GI symptoms, stomach aches, nausea, couldn't eat certain things. And this went on for years. And after, having every single test known to man and everything was fine, it was like, there's got to be more to it. And the more that I spoke with people, the more that I realized that other people are sort of in the same boat, that we have these vague symptoms or we have these health things, we have this fatigue or we have brain fog. We're not really sure what is going on. And I found that, I really was interested in looking a little bit further into why they were having these symptoms and why everything was fine, but yet so many people sort of were at this, crossroads where they didn't really know where else to go. So I was interested in learning a little bit more about blood work. And the way that I was taught to really look at blood work was to memorize lab values and sort of know what the blood work represents. Um, but if they fall within the normal range, they won't get flagged in a particular, in somebody's labs. And if they do, physicians use them to make diagnoses and to really look at treatment. But I really found that looking at it the functional way was something that I had been missing, because the functional range is much narrower. And what we're looking at is we're looking for optimal ranges. So you might be within normal limits in a traditional, lab work, but it's not where we would like you to be in order to feel your best and be optimal. So that's really when I found, there's a lot that, we can be doing here, that really just takes a more specific look with a lens at not only just trying to put a Band-Aid on a symptom, but really looking at what is the cause, what is the cause that is happening here, and what can we do? Can we correct a nutritional deficiency? Is this an underlying viral infection or bacterial infection? Again, not quite enough where it's going to be flagged on a traditional blood work panel, but enough where it can be causing some cellular, changes in the body and things like that. So, and I find the more people that I talk to, the more that this goes on. And, Western medicine is wonderful with the acute illnesses and things that come up with all the technology and the surgical, options that are available, and medication and everything. I mean, it's wonderful, but we really are lacking with how do we go about managing chronic illness. And we don't really have a good way of providing, treatment beyond that acute approach. What can we do in order to facilitate healing that's more long-term?
Yes, and long-term healing is definitely the way to go. And then, like you said, that there is a place for medication.
Yes.
And there is a place for getting things, like when you know what the problem is, half of the solution is knowing what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily have to include medicine. It's like, okay, I have to change my diet. That can be hard for some people, but it's that shift. It's like, if I do this, I will feel better and I don't have to take pills anymore.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And weight is the biggest thing. People, I hear all these things about people wanting to take Ozempic and all of these other medications. It's the quick fix in order to lose weight. But what happens when you're not taking it? What is it doing? It's not really teaching you, the proper way to incorporate a healthy diet. So that way you can do all of the things and achieve your results without having to do a medication with taking on the risks of side effects and things like that. So our health is very much similar to that. It goes back to the basics, making sure we have good nutrition, we're getting exercise, fresh air, we're trying to reduce, our stress and things, like that. Again, it's not really magic, but if you do all of those things to some extent every day and you develop these lifelong habits, then, that's half the battle, for sure. It is just, taking it down to the basics.
And as we're taking it down to the basics, specifically, you like to work with the children and adolescents, and we both have boys. Mine is 17 now, but in like kindergarten and early on, he was one of those who was diagnosed with ADHD. And I made it very clear to his neurologist and his neurologist PA that I was a nomad's mom. And thankfully, the PA was on, not that the neurologist wasn't on my side, but the PA was like, okay, she understands that medicine isn't necessary all the time. Like, it was just a matter of focus and attention. And it's like, okay, he's going to be out in the real world at some point in his life, and I don't want him on meds for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they've done studies from back in the day. I'm in my, I'll hate to admit this, but I'm in my 40s, and people who were on Ritalin back when I was young, they've done brain scans of what the medication has done. There's some people with like Swiss cheese for brains, and I never wanted that for my son or any kid. I feel like there are some things that can be done without medication. What are your thoughts on that?
I do believe that medication is not usually the first go-to that I recommend. Again, depending, each person is, is unique. I take each case, it's a case-by-case basis. But yeah, many times medication is not necessary. Many times it's, okay, for example, perfect example, my child has a terrible time sleeping. Like he'll go to bed at like 10 and he'll be laying in bed until about 2 or 3 and he's still awake. And when I ask, like, well, okay, how much screen time is your child getting? Is your child using the screen like 2 hours within going to bed? Is there a routine for bedtime? And a lot of times I find, well, no, he usually goes in his room and he has his phone on him, and which is fine. But it's like, okay, we don't need to try the medication first with that. First, just try to decrease the screen use within bed, within 2 hours before going to sleep. Let's try, sleep hygiene. Make sure your room is conducive for sleep. Make sure that you're reading a book or you're listening to music that's calming and relaxing, and you have this whole routine that is training your body and your brain to get ready to go to sleep. So that's just one example. And there are other examples too. Like, it doesn't have to be medication. With your example for ADHD, it's really hard to determine when children, they can't focus, they can't pay attention, or they're hyperactive. It can be just because they're boys. My boys were the same. It doesn't necessarily mean I look at it as, oh, we need to fix it. You really have to look at it as just one piece of the puzzle. Could it be ADHD? Yes. But it could be lots of other things too. So I always look at how much of an impact is this having in this child's peer relationships, the ability to make friends, the ability to, to get good grades and to be in the classroom. So if this is something like the child is getting good grades and they have friends and, maybe they're just a little rambunctious, I don't necessarily think that that's something that requires the use of a medication. Now, if it's impacting their grades and it's having an effect on their self-esteem, like say, for example, this is the child that's, really can't sit still and has, true ADHD and can't focus, the grades are impacted. And this is the child that's constantly getting called out in class. And now it's affecting like their self-esteem. Like, I'm always getting in trouble. People don't want to be friends with me because I'm the troublemaker, for example. Well, maybe that's affecting, again, more components to this child's life. Maybe that's something that could be a possibility, but again, it shouldn't really be the only tool. It can be organizing, time management, making sure this kid had breakfast, has this kid had a snack, it could be things like that. Is this child ready to learn? Are we giving the child all of the tools that they need in order to be able to learn? So it's just, you got to look at everything,
Yep, the holistic part of it, as we're speaking of. Now, do you do holistic blood work on the children as well?
I do. I will get a set of lab work initially, because I like to see what's going on. And many times I do find that they have some, deficiencies. Vitamin D, for example.
It's a big one.
A lot of the blood work that I find really low in vitamin D, which could be contributing to their mood, their depression, their anxiety, can affect their immune system. So I really try to make sure that when my patients are coming to me with concerns, I like to rule out that it isn't anything physical that might be contributing to their symptoms. Because if it's a matter of, increasing their vitamin D level, well, wonderful. I would rather do that than, say, for example, have to prescribe a medication that will, improve their mood, for example. So I do like to look at the blood work, and I like to sort of look at everything and say, okay, let's try this first, because if we correct this, maybe we'll, maybe we'll be feeling much better. Maybe we'll have more energy. That's another one too. They're fatigued. They're so tired. They can't get out of bed. And then I see their vitamin D is in the toilet. I'm like, no wonder why you're so exhausted and you can't get out of bed and you're, depressed. Where traditionally those symptoms, we would be looking at, a possible, depression diagnosis and
Right.
treating with medication for that. So I do like to look at the blood work and just make sure that it isn't an iron deficiency. It isn't, other things that we don't really necessarily need to use medication for. That I like to look at and see if I can correct first and then see what happens.
That is wonderful. And we both know, and I'm sure everyone knows, that when you feel good, that kind of helps put you at ease and function in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have to look at everything, the whole big picture, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure that, you're taking time to, for self-care, for taking care of yourself, making sure that, you have good relationships, making sure that, you've got access to good food and fresh air, and clean water. All of those things make an impact on how we feel. And certainly it impacts our physical health as well.
And just a moment, going back to the mental health, we're going to focus here is, how do you personally define peace? So you have all these tools at your disposal and you're really working with somebody, but how do you define peace?
Oh gosh, I think that's individual to each person. I think um, to me, how I would define peace is acceptance of who I am, acceptance of other people, and it can include maybe someone who is ill. Just because somebody's ill and unhealthy doesn't mean they don't see themselves as healthy, doesn't mean that they're not at peace. So being at peace is having, your spirituality connected with your, mental health, your physical health, how that correlates with the environment, and like just, what sort of like feeling does that bring upon you when you have all of those things working in harmony with each other. I find it very, very calming and very, almost like peaceful, all of the things working together. To me, that's what having peace means. Just to kind of love yourself and love everything else, and just appreciate, who you are, and appreciate if you're not perfect, and that you have these things and you're okay, with that, and you just strive to be the best that you can be right in that moment.
That is a beautiful answer. And also, kind of, how do you find peace? Now, based on that definition, how do you find peace personally?
Personally, I think of my children. I look at my children and they mean the world to me. I just, I look at them, and if they're smiling and they're happy, that brings me so much joy and peace. Also, my favorite place to be ever is just by the water, and at the beach, just looking out into the waves and just hearing the waves, hearing children laughing, just feeling the sun on my skin, and just being there is the most special thing to me. I just crave it so much, and it can just be anywhere, really, but anywhere where I can have my feet in the ocean and just be there is the most magical place for me.
And it's kind of like just being present in that
Yes.
moment.
Yes. Just feeling alive, like, oh, like, here's the world. Here's this beautiful place that we're so lucky to be in. And here's this, shining sun and this beautiful ocean. And it just is so calming. And it just instantly just relaxes me.
Water is very powerful. I like water is one of my peaceful places as well. It's very powerful because it can be, calming, but it can also show you its tumultuous side. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's how you find peace. So how do you help others find peace?
I usually like to ask them, what do they like to do? What is your favorite thing to do? What brings you joy? For someone, it might be, I just like to listen to music. Okay, well, take some time in your day to put on your favorite song and just close your eyes and just listen to the music that you love. Or, I love just taking 5 minutes and listening to the sound of the ocean. Okay, well, maybe there's like a sleep app, a sleep app that will provide those sounds for you. But just really looking at what is it that you enjoy, and just make sure that you take time every single day to tap into that and think about, how do you feel when you're thinking about being in your favorite place, or doing what you're doing. Many times I'll tell patients, tell me what your favorite thing is to do, or tell me your happy place. Okay, now close your eyes. And if it's the beach, okay, listen to the waves. Now try to imagine your feet touching the sand. What sounds do you hear? Do you smell anything? Almost like trying to take yourself back there mentally, and really try to feel all of the feels that are special, special to you. And for everyone that's individual. But I usually like to start off with that. Tell me what you like to do. What's your favorite thing? What makes you happy? What is the favorite thing that you like, or whatever. And I usually try to tap into what kids like to do, and then, okay, let's dig a little deeper, and how you can find these sort of little times in your day to tap into, your thing.
Now, do you find that younger children are more receptive than adolescents, or vice versa? Or is it kind of the same?
I find younger children, sometimes it's a little bit easier for them to tap into things like that. I find sometimes the adolescents feel like, oh, this feels kind of silly, or but I find the younger kiddos are much more open, much more like, curious and exploring, and things like that, and willing to try these things. Where adolescents sometimes might be a little bit nervous. But not always, not always. But I do find the younger kiddos much more easier to like jump on board with that sort of stuff.
Do you think it, age-wise for the adolescents, even if it's just you one-on-one, you think it's a little bit of, if anyone knew, they might, kind of make fun of me type of fear? Or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, adolescence for them, pretty much their peers. That is the those are the people that are going to have the most impact on adolescents, and it's just their developmental age
yeah,
group, is that what their peers think, what they say about them, is going to make the biggest impact, as opposed to family members, or other people. I find that definitely the peer factor is a very strong and powerful one, and it's a matter of like, what are my peers gonna think if I do this, or not do that. It's definitely powerful.
yeah, and it's definitely challenging. Like I said, my son is an adolescent, and I encourage him to do certain things, and I get the pushback because of like, you're go over there, you don't know what you're talking about, mom.
Yeah.
Um, try and go back there myself, and it's like, yeah, at his age, I think I knew it all too. It's that I know it all age.
Yes.
So I think that looking forward, he has the tools. So do you think putting that seed in and kind of like trying to continue helping them in that way has had an impact in your work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think of myself when I was a teenager, and thinking my parents didn't know anything, and they didn't know what they were talking about. And it didn't matter really what my parents thought, as long as my friends thought that this was cool, or that was cool, or I was doing what everybody else was doing. But over time, I realized as I became older, how irrelevant really, I think about all of the feelings I had as a teenager and as a young adult, worrying about what other people thought about me. And then, talking about this with my own kids, because they sometimes get upset. This one is not talking to me, or that one said this about, and again, I understand how it impacts their emotions and how they feel at the time. And I just say, gosh, when you're older, you're going to think back and these people aren't going to mean anything. You're like, but I wish I could just take that away from you. But I know everyone experiences it. And then looking back, I'm like, yeah, it's so true. Like over time, like I spent all this time just fretting about what other people, might think. And, how much time did I waste, how much time did I waste doing that? And then that's what is so great about when you become older. You look back and you're like, I just don't really care what other people think. I'm going to do what makes me happy. And it's exhilarating. And that's peace, not caring what other people think. You just do what makes you, you, and that's it. Yeah, it's great. It's so freeing. But I do remember, that angst of being a teenager and feeling all of the things and thinking, that you just know so much, and then you realize you really don't. But I remember always what my parents, all the things that they taught me, even when I didn't think they knew everything. It all is in here. And I do appreciate, everything that they did for me. And I'm very grateful. And I'm hoping that my kids also, as they grow and, that maybe some of the things that I try to say now that they think sound absolutely ridiculous, maybe over time they'll realize, mom was right about that.
I think we all have those moments. I've had those moments. I'm sure my parents have been going in the background. I told you so.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the things like I'm never going to do this. Like when I have kids, I'm going to let them do this and I'm going to let them do that. And, and then I'm like,
wrong.
My mom all over again. Like, and that's okay.
Yeah. It's like, I get it now. I get it now.
Yeah. And then you appreciate them more and more. Like the older I get, I just appreciate all the sacrifice, all the things that they do to make sure that you're a good person and that you have, what you need. And it's, yeah.
And as we go from adolescence to that early adulthood, where our friends still matter, but at the same time, we're becoming our own person. Do you feel that as we transition, or do you see it as they transition and you work with adults, that sometimes the depression is still trying to fit in?
Yes, because that gets carried with them. It could be even like an event that happened in childhood that was really forgotten about, on the forefront, but it's still causing feelings as they grow up into a teenager and, into an adult. So experiences that maybe they had with relationships or things that they observed or grew up, with, can definitely have an impact on their mood and their depression as they grow up and sort of develop. And that's why, this trauma-informed approach in working with kids is so important, because it could be something that's in their childhood, a past trauma, or something that's current that can be with them for the rest of their lives. So yeah, trauma is definitely, something that I do work a lot with kids, and they experience that, and it carries over into adulthood. And sometimes it's by the choices that they make in relationships, or it's trying to self-medicate substances, So you kind of see it evolve, over time as they become adults. Yeah.
And so my next question is kind of twofold. And it's, you have just a few minutes to bring someone into like a peaceful mode. I call it what's in your toolbox. And I want to do 2 different age groups. I have a nephew. He's on the spectrum. He's high functioning. We think it's Asperger's, but they put him high functioning on the spectrum. And he's a brilliant little boy. He has meltdowns. So what's in your toolbox to help us calm him down and bring him to peace? I'm sure my sister's got a gazillion under her belt, but for the rest of us, how could we bring this little boy peace quickly? Or what could we use?
When a lot of times when I worked with kids who had these meltdowns, I would just like hold their hand and say, let's breathe. As simple as that. Okay, take a breath with me. Do what I do. Take a breath. Take a breath, and that's the simple thing that you can do right on the spot to kind of bring down the situation. Another thing is, try to give them, take space. Okay, let's come with me. Let's go here. Breathe with me, take a breath, another deep breath. That's one of the quickest things to do. And then just taking time with them to give them a space. Maybe they're lashing out because their environment's overstimulating and there's so many things going on. So I try to bring them into a quiet space as well, if it's feasible,
Right.
Or take this, let's go take a little break in this quiet space. Tell me more about it. I understand that you're upset. Tell me more. And let's just take a couple of deep breaths. And I find like the breathing techniques help. And kids are usually quite receptive to doing that.
Yeah.
Taking those deep breaths. And, physically it will help bring that down their respiratory rate. It'll also help bring down their heart rate. And then it'll definitely start to, to bring down some of that, anxiety or that frustration that they're having. But that's usually the quickest thing. Let's go take some space. Tell me more about, I want to hear, I see that you're concerned. Tell me more. And let's have a couple of deep breaths. And then you can tell me, because I'm having trouble really trying to understand, so let's just, and then you can tell me, whatever you want to tell me.
That I like. I think that works on so many planes, especially with the little ones, and then people on the spectrum of all ages. Thank you for that. And now let's bring it up to our adolescents, and you and I have a few of those. So what's in your toolbox?
Yeah. So with the adolescents, so usually I try to find what's the one thing that I can connect with this adolescent on. I try to find out what is it that they like. If they like a certain, well, I wouldn't say video games because I'm not really that, familiar with them. But if it's something that I know that they like, I try to engage them in a conversation for them to tell me a little bit more about, what they like to do. Or if it's something that I don't like, okay, tell me, you really like video games. Tell me one of them that you really like, and how do you play it, and what's the theme of the game? And then all of a sudden, if I start having them talk about what they like, then they realize, okay, this person's really listening to me. They are interested in what I have to say. They really want to know about me, right? As opposed to somebody else just asking the questions and all of that. I find like if I just turn around and, have them talk about something that they really enjoy, that sort of opens up the door to like, oh, okay. That can be one way. Sometimes it can be distraction. Like, in the hospital setting, we used to have, children and adolescents who were really, upset at the time. And I remember I could not think of anything to like, just try to like talk to this kid about. And I knew he used to really like to work out and go to the gym. And I made this joke, like, I bet you I can beat you in the push-up challenge. And it was like in the middle of this huge, like, tantrum almost. And he just like looked at me and said, no, you can't. And it was just like a joke. Then all of a sudden, like, just because I'm a girl, I can do push-ups. So it was just like that one thing. Like, so sometimes if all else fails, you try to use a distraction or something that you can use to be like, oh, so I'll never forget that when I challenged somebody, like, just push-ups, and it just broke that. I'm like, okay, great. That's the one thing that I do. And that's the wonderful thing about mental health, is that we use ourselves in the process when we're working with patients. It's not just, oh, you have this, I'm going to hang up your antibiotic again, which is all wonderful and everything. But in mental health, we don't have those things. So in mental health, we almost like, we use ourselves. What do I like to do? What does this kid like to do? Let's try to connect on this level. And we use ourselves a lot in the process when we're trying to help patients, in their journey to health and what they need at the moment. So that's really great about the mental health field, is that you use yourself, and whatever works about yourself that you can bring to the table that can be helpful for somebody else is really so great too.
That relatability.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like I find myself telling my son, I was your age once, and yeah, I thought I knew it all, and then I grew up. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you something, you might not like adulthood.
Yeah. 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 And it is that relatability. All the years I worked in mental health, one of my younger boy, when he was 9, had OCD, and it sort of like came insidious, and then over time it sort of ballooned up to a point where he did require hospitalization and did require medications and all of that. And when I work with parents now who have these these concerns and these struggles with their own child, I understand, not only from a provider, but as a mom, I'm like, I get it, and I was a mental health nurse at the time that my child was experiencing this. And when I look back, sure, he used to only like to wear blue underwear, but he was 9. So I'm like, okay. Or like he would be checking expiration dates on things. And I'm like, okay, didn't really like ever think about this becoming a bigger issue until it did. And I was like, oh, how did I not like see that? And then it did just escalate and snowball. And he's 15 now, and he's my hero. He's just amazing because he has done so well and has just overcome this challenge. That, I mean, he's my hero. Like, and I always, tell kids, like, don't worry. I know this is so difficult right now to deal with. And I know how much, I know how much this hurts. And, there's hope, and, it does. And it helps other families. They're like, oh, okay, you understand. Yeah, I lived it. I was that mom, and that, that went through that. So it does make it relatable. So if you can try to make a connection with someone, like, I know, I've been there, I can help. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I can help, and we can do this. This is definitely something that we can do. It's just great to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, like, when I was afraid of my son possibly having an eating disorder, having been through that and still struggle at times myself. I know, but I also know what to watch for. So I watch him like a hawk and try and like talk him down. And it's hard. It's not easy because it goes back to the peers more so than anything else.
Yeah.
But making it relatable and having that to talk to my son about and talk to other people that I help is very key. It's like, oh, you don't know what I'm going through. I'm going to tell you a story. And, it's like all of a sudden they see things in a different light.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just brings up that credibility, like, oh, okay, okay, you do. And yeah.
And for sure. And I think that as parents, and you bringing their children and adolescents to you and having that knowledge, not only on the education level, but in the personal level, and like you said, that credibility, they will take what you say that much more seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they will.
And here's a fun one. How do you bring the parents peace? Because they're going, as we know, they're going through a lot.
Yeah.
And they need that, 5-10 minutes themselves. So how do we help them get there?
Yeah, yeah. I do a lot of the work. I do a lot of work with parents, and usually, I'll just, if I don't understand, or I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. If there's any resources that you need, just reach out to me. I know this is tough. You're doing the best that you can. You're a great mom. You're doing everything. This is challenging. I'm here to help you, and we can get through this together. I think just parents knowing, like, okay, there's people that care, that are there, that want to help, that understand what I'm going through. And sometimes it's just a matter of, I'm here to listen, just
Yeah.
I'm here to listen. And I do work with a lot of parents who are really frustrated, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And I said, I understand, I understand. I'm here to listen. I'm here to help you in any way that I can. What would help your child the best. And try to help parents sometimes, like, okay, let's come up with a plan. Like, what can we do as far as, like, if you're really struggling to manage, the situation at home, then let's work together to come up with, like, a reward system. Like, if you're struggling with your child not following instructions, well, let's sit together and we'll talk about what's important to this child, what's important to you as a parent. Let's try to meet in the middle. And then maybe, for example, if your child has done whatever you had asked for the week, maybe you want to reward that child with something. And it doesn't have to be monetary. It's maybe your child can pick the movie for the family movie night or something like that. So if children have something that they can work towards, I find that that's much they're much more likely to engage in whatever it is that the parent wants them to do. And I think the parent sort of needs a little bit of help too. Like, let's make sure that when you do set that expectation, that you follow through with that expectation, and that you praise, catch them when they're being good. Don't just, you know, um, point out the negative, or only give attention when it's negative. Just, try to catch them when they're good. So a lot of times the parents and the children sort of need, like, what do I need to do? And sometimes I've just been a referee. Like, I've had
Oh no.
some appointments where it's a parent and a child, and they're just yelling at each other the whole time. And I'm like, okay, I see mom's point, I see your point, but we can't get into, like, no one can hear each other. So let's just take a deep breath. Let's maybe get into some family therapy. Let's kind of talk about it, because sometimes that's all you have to do is, like, be the referee, and just, you know be that neutral person that's like, okay, this is not, I understand your frustration, I understand your frustration, but let's try to meet somewhere in the middle, so that way we can come up with a plan and start to tackle some of the challenges that each one of you, have. And it can be hard.
You can, but
Yeah,
in the end, if you help the parent find some peace in what they're going through, it will eventually trickle down, or at some point the kids and parents come to the same page.
yeah, yeah. Ideally.
I do. So, before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share with us about peace, or about bringing peace into our lives on a regular, everyday basis?
Yeah, I just think we really need to make sure that we are engaging every day in some sort of self care. I know so many of us working hard, parents, just the day to day grind of making sure that we're providing for our families and doing everything that we're supposed to do and trying to do all of these things. We sometimes really forget that that can take a toll on us emotionally, physically, and what have you. And we will not be any good to anybody else if we're not good to ourselves first, and make sure that we are engaging in some sort of self-care first. We've got to make sure that our own mask is on properly before we can help anybody else put on their own mask. So I think that's really important. And sometimes I admit, I don't do that very often. And then it does catch up with me, because I become more irritable. I become angry, because I'm like, I'm doing everything all the time, and I haven't really been able to do something for myself. So I think it's important to try to make sure that we check in with ourselves and to do that.
And Michael is saying great advice. So
Thank you, Michael. Good morning.
So it is definitely important to take care of ourselves. That is a number one, and it does bring about peace. So thank you for that reminder. And thank you for sharing part of your morning with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So hold on one second. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this edition of Unique Peace. Join us next week as we filter through and discover more about how to bring peace into our lives.